My parents kicked my two children out of their house to make room for my sister's baby, calling him their golden grandchild, who deserved the best rooms and all their attention. But they had no idea what I had been secretly planning for months, while they thought I was struggling and helpless. I'm Sarah, 38 years old, and a single mother to Michael, who's 12, and Sophie, who's 9. My younger sister Jessica is 29 and has an 8-month-old baby named Noah. If you're watching this and have ever felt like the forgotten child in your family, drop a comment about where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button, because this story is going to shock you. For 18 months, we'd been living with my parents, Linda and Rober, after I lost my job. I thought they were helping us get back on our feet, but I was about to discover just how little they valued me and my children compared to their precious golden grandchild. Let me give you some background so you understand how we got to this point. 18 months ago, I was working as a marketing manager, making decent money, about $55,000 a year. Then my company went through massive downsizing, and I was one of the casualties. At the same time, my apartment lease was ending, and with the job market being so tight, I couldn't afford to renew it without a steady income. My parents offered to let us stay with them temporarily. "Just until you get back on your feet," my mother, Linda, said. It seemed like a blessing at the time. I was a single mom trying to provide for Michael and Sophie after their dad walked out on us 3 years earlier, so any help felt like a lifeline. I want to be clear about our arrangement. This wasn't charity. I was paying my parents $800 a month in rent, plus I covered groceries and utilities. I also helped with all the household chores and yard work. In return, they helped watch the kids after school while I went on job interviews or did freelance work to keep money coming in. But here's the thing about my family dynamics that you need to understand. I've always been the responsible daughter. The one who followed the rules, got good grades, worked hard, and never asked for help unless I had to. My sister Jessica, on the other hand, has always been the favorite. She was the artistic one, the free spirit who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Jessica dropped out of art school after 2 years, when my parents were paying her tuition. She's bounced between waitressing jobs and failed business ventures that my parents funded. A pottery studio that lasted 6 months. A freelance photography business that never got off the ground. An online boutique that folded after she spent all the startup money on her wardrobe. Every time, my parents bailed her out with money, emotional support, and endless patience. Meanwhile, when I needed help, the response was always, "You're so capable, Sarah. You'll figure it out." When I asked to borrow money for Michael's orthodontics, they said they were on a fixed income. 2 weeks later, they gave Jessica $3,000 for her latest business idea. 8 months ago, Jessica got pregnant from a brief relationship that didn't work out. Instead of stepping up and taking responsibility, she moved back home when Noah was just 3 months old. And that's when everything started to change for me and my kids. At first, it seemed reasonable. Jessica had a newborn. She needed help, and my parents were excited about their new grandchild. I encouraged Michael and Sophie to be patient and kind with their new cousin. I understood that babies require a lot of attention. But the changes started immediately. Jessica and Noah got the best guest room, the one with the private bathroom and lots of natural light. My kids, who had each had their small bedroom, were suddenly told they needed to share the smaller back bedroom because babies need more space and quiet for proper development. The gift disparity was obvious from the start. For Noah's nursery, my parents bought a $500 convertible crib, a $300 changing table, and spent another $200 on decorations. When Michael's 12th birthday came around a month later, he got a $20 basketball and a homemade cake. Sophie's birthday gifts totaled maybe $25. When I mentioned the difference, my mother said, "The experience of setting up a nursery is important for us as grandparents. Your kids understand they're older and don't need as much." But my kids were starting to notice. They were becoming quieter, asking fewer questions, and I could see them pulling back emotionally. They were starting to feel like they didn't belong in their own temporary home. Over the next few months, the favoritism became impossible to ignore. Let me walk you through how it escalated, because it didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process that made me question my perceptions at first. In month 1 after Jessica moved in, the changes were subtle but there. Noah got moved into what had been the formal dining room, which my mother converted into a beautiful nursery with expensive wallpaper and a ceiling fan. Meanwhile, my kids were relocated to what was the basement playroom with 2 twin beds squeezed in. "It's just temporary while we figure out the best long-term arrangement," my father said. The household schedule completely revolved around Noah's feeding and sleep times. Family dinners were moved earlier because Noah got fussy in the evenings. The TV volume had to be kept low during his naps. My kids learned to whisper in their own living space and tiptoe around the house during the day. Month 2, things became more obvious. My parents started canceling plans with Michael and Sophie if Jessica needed babysitting. Michael had been looking forward to going fishing with my dad for weeks, but when Jessica wanted to go out with friends, suddenly my father was too busy. "Noah needs consistency with his caregivers," he explained. Jessica got full use of my mother's car while I was taking public transportation to job interviews. When I asked about occasionally borrowing it, my mother said, "Jessica has the baby. She needs reliable transportation for doctor appointments and emergencies." Christmas that year was eye-opening. My parents spent over $300 on gifts for Noah, including toys he was too young to even play with. "We're creating memories and traditions." My mother gushed as she took dozens of photos of Noah with presents he couldn't even focus on. Michael and Sophie got about $50 worth of gifts each, mostly practical items like socks and school supplies. But here's what my family didn't know. During all of this, I wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I had been working. 3 months after moving in with my parents, I started doing freelance marketing work for small businesses. Then, 5 months ago, my former company's main competitor reached out to me. They wanted me to work remotely as a senior marketing consultant. I took the job immediately. The starting salary was $75,000, which was more than I'd been making before. But I kept this completely secret from my family. I worked while the kids were at school and after they went to bed. I told my parents I was looking for opportunities and doing some freelance projects, which wasn't technically a lie. Why didn't I tell them? Because I knew Jessica would find some way to sabotage it. She'd done it before when we were younger. And I knew my parents would either try to convince me to stay and help more with Noah, or they'd start treating my success like it was no big deal compared to Jessica's struggles. In month 3, the incidents became more blatant. Michael had a basketball game that he'd been talking about for weeks. It was a playoff game, and he was the starting point guard. The same day, Noah had a routine pediatrician appointment for his 6-month checkup. My parents chose to go to Noah's appointment instead of Michael's game. "Medical appointments can't be rescheduled," my mother said, even though I pointed out that the doctor had offered 3 other available times. Sophie had been practicing for her school play for months. She had a speaking role and was so proud. On the night of the performance, my parents showed up 30 minutes late because Noah had needed an extra feeding and they couldn't leave until he was settled. They missed Sophie's entire scene. She saw them walk in during the final bow, and her face just crumpled. Then there was the job interview incident that almost cost me a big opportunity. I had a virtual interview for what I thought might be a corporate position, and I needed childcare for just 2 hours after school. My parents refused because it was Jessica's self-care day, and they were watching Noah, so she could get her nails done and meet friends for lunch. I almost had to cancel the interview until my neighbor, Mrs. CH, offered to help. That interview didn't lead to anything, but it showed me exactly where my kids and I stood in the priority list. Jessica's manicure was more important than my career. But the incident that opened my eyes happened during Sophie's 9th birthday. I had been planning her party for weeks. We'd sent invitations, ordered a cake, and decorated the backyard. The morning of her party, Jessica announced that she wanted to have a first foods celebration for Noah that same day because she'd seen something cute on Instagram. Instead of telling Jessica to pick another day, my parents suggested we combine the parties. "It'll be so special to celebrate both kids together," my mother said. But what she meant was that Noah's milestone would become the focus, and Sophie would have to share her special day with a baby who wouldn't even remember it. I watched my daughter's face as my mother started rearranging the decorations to include Noah's high chair at the head table. Sophie didn't complain. She never did. but I saw her quietly take down the Sophie's 9th birthday banner and replace it with one that just said family celebration. That night, I found Sophie crying in her bed. "Mom, why don't Grandma and Grandpa love me and Michael as much as they love Noah?" she asked me. I held her and promised that she was loved and important, but inside, I was furious. That was the moment I realized we had to get out of there. Not just eventually, but soon. My children deserved better than to grow up feeling like they were second-class family members. The breaking point was coming, and I was more ready for it than anyone realized. The final straw came on a Sunday evening in late spring. My parents called a family meeting, which should have been my first warning sign. Jessica was there holding Noah. My parents were sitting formally at the kitchen table, and my kids were playing quietly in the corner, sensing the tension in the room. "We need to talk about living arrangements," my father began, clearing his throat like he was delivering a business presentation. "We've been thinking about what's best for everyone, and we've made a difficult decision." My mother jumped in. "Jessica and Noah need more stability and space for proper development. A growing baby has different needs than older children." I felt my stomach drop, but I kept my voice calm. "What exactly are you saying?" "We think it's time for you and the kids to find your place," my father said, not quite meeting my eyes. "By the end of next month would be best for everyone." The room went completely silent except for Noah making baby noises. Michael and Sophie had stopped playing and were staring at their grandparents with wide, confused eyes. "What about our arrangement?" I asked carefully. "I pay rent, I help with everything around here, and the kids are settled in their school district." "Jessica has a baby," my mother said, as if that explained everything. "She needs more support right now. She's dealing with postpartum challenges and the stress of single motherhood." I almost laughed at the irony. I've been a single mother for 3 years. Where was this concern when I was dealing with the stress of job loss and homelessness? "That's different," my father said dismissively. "Your kids are older, they're more adaptable. Noah is at a critical development stage. He needs consistency, quiet, and the best environment we can provide." Jessica finally spoke up, bouncing Noah on her knee with a barely concealed smirk. "I'm sure you understand, sis. Family first, right? And right now, Noah needs the family support more than anyone." That's when Sophie, my brave little girl, spoke up from the corner. "Are we getting kicked out because we're bad, Grandma?" My mother's face softened for just a moment. "Oh, honey, no. You're not bad. It's just that babies need special care, and Uncle Noah is so little and precious." "But we live here too," Michael said, his voice shaking slightly. "We help with chores, and we're quiet during Noah's naps. Why does he get to stay?" But we have to leave." My father waved his hand impatiently. "You children will understand when you're older. Sometimes adults have to make hard decisions for the good of the family." "The good of which family?" I asked pointedly. "Because it sounds like you're choosing one part of your family over another." "Don't be dramatic, Sarah," my mother sighed. "You've always been so independent and strong. You don't need us the way Jessica does. You'll figure something out, you always do." And there it was. The truth I'd been avoiding for months. In their minds, I was being punished for being capable. Because I didn't fall apart and demand constant rescue like Jessica, I was deemed less worthy of support. Jessica leaned forward, still holding Noah like a shield. "Sarah, I know this seems sudden, but I do need more space. Noah's going to start crawling soon, and he needs room to explore safely. Plus, I'm thinking about starting a small business from home, so I'll need office space too." "Another business?" I couldn't help but ask. "What happened to the online boutique?" "That was different," she said quickly. "This is going to be baby-related products. I have real experience now." My father nodded enthusiastically. "We think it's a wonderful idea. Jessica has such an entrepreneurial spirit, and with Noah as inspiration, she could build something special." I looked around the table at these people who were supposed to love and support my children, and I felt a strange sense of calm come over me. They had no idea what they were about to lose. "You know what?" I said, surprising them with my tone. "You're right. It is about putting family first. And I'm about to show you exactly what that means." They all looked confused. Jessica stopped bouncing Noah. My parents exchanged glances. What do you mean by that? My mother asked cautiously. I stood up and looked at my children, who were watching me with complete trust. I mean that I've been putting my family first this whole time. My real family. My children. And I'm going to continue doing exactly that. Sarah, what are you talking about? My father asked, starting to look annoyed. I smiled, and for the first time in months, it was a genuine smile. I'm talking about the fact that you've made this decision incredibly easy for me. So easy that I should probably mention we'll be moving into our new home next Friday. The silence that followed was deafening. The look on their faces was priceless. Complete shock, confusion, and something that looked almost like fear. It was Jessica who recovered first. What new home? She asked, her voice higher than usual. Sarah, what are you talking about? I sat back down, completely calm now that the secret was out. I'm talking about the 3-bedroom townhouse I've been renting about 15 minutes from here. The lease starts Friday, which is exactly when you want us out. Perfect timing. My father was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. How is that even possible? You don't have a job, you've been doing odd freelance work. How could you afford a rental deposit and first month's rent?
That's where you're wrong, Dad. I do have a job.
I've had a job for 5 months now. I'm working remotely as a senior marketing consultant, making $75,000 a year, which is more than I was making before. My mother gasped. 5 months? You've been working for 5 months and didn't tell us. I've been working while Michael and Sophie were at school and after they went to bed. You know, during those times when you thought I was just moping around, feeling sorry for myself. Jessica was getting agitated now, shifting Noah nervously. But why didn't you say anything? We could have helped. We could have celebrated with you. I almost laughed. Helped? Jessica, when have you ever helped me with anything? And celebrated? Like how you celebrated when I got my marketing degree. Oh, wait. That was the same week you announced you were dropping out of art school, so all the attention went to consoling you. That's not fair, my mother protested. We've always supported both of you girls. Really? Because when I asked to borrow money for Michael's orthodontics, you said you were on a fixed income. But 2 weeks later, you gave Jessica $3,000 for another business venture. When I needed the car for job interviews, it wasn't available, but Jessica could use it to go shopping with friends. My father was getting red in the face. We had no idea you were struggling financially. If you told us about the job. I wasn't struggling, I interrupted. That's the point. I was succeeding. I was taking care of my family and planning our future. I just learned not to depend on conditional support from people who have favorites. I pulled out my phone and showed them photos I'd taken of our new place. 3 bedrooms, so Michael and Sophie each get their room again. A backyard where they can play without worrying about waking anyone up. A kitchen where we can cook meals we want to eat instead of whatever accommodates Noah's schedule. Sophie jumped up from where she'd been sitting. Mom, we get our rooms? And our own house. We do, sweetheart, I told her and watched her face light up in a way I hadn't seen in months. Michael was staring at the photos on my phone. Is this why you've been working on the computer so much at night? You were planning our escape? I was planning our future, I corrected gently. A future where you two are the priority, where you matter just as much as any other child in this family. Jessica was starting to panic now, and I could see why. She was suddenly realizing that she was about to lose her built-in babysitter, her backup childcare, and probably her biggest source of practical support. Sarah, you can't just leave like this. What about helping each other? What about family support? I've been providing family support for 18 months, I replied. I've been paying rent, buying groceries, doing chores, and babysitting Noah whenever you wanted a break. Now it's time for me to support my children by giving them a home where they're valued. My father was sputtering. You can't be serious about this. Where did you get the money for deposits and moving expenses? This doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense when you realize I've been saving systematically for months. No expensive nights out, no shopping sprees, no spontaneous business ventures. Just careful budgeting and planning for my children's future. But we didn't know. my mother said weakly. If you told us about the job, about your plans, you would have what? Treated my kids better? Started valuing my contributions? Or would you have found ways to make me feel guilty for leaving and tried to convince me to stay to help with your golden grandchild? The room was quiet except for Noah starting to fuss. Jessica automatically started the bouncing and shushing routine that had dominated our household for months. This is happening, my father asked, still not quite believing it. The moving truck comes Thursday, I confirmed. The kids and I will spend Thursday night at a hotel, and Friday we'll wake up in our new home. Michael looked at me with such pride in his eyes. Mom, you planned all this by yourself? I planned it for all of us, I told him. Because we deserve a home where everyone matters equally, where no one has to whisper or hide or feel like they're taking up too much space. Sophie was practically bouncing with excitement. Can we decorate our rooms however we want? However you want, I promised. It's our home, our rules, our priorities. The family that had been so sure of their power over me was finally beginning to realize that I'd been 10 steps ahead all along. The immediate aftermath of my revelation was both satisfying and exhausting. My parents went through all the classic stages of losing control over someone they'd taken for granted. First came denial and attempts to maintain authority. You're being impulsive and dramatic, my father declared. You need to think about what's best for the children. They need stability, not upheaval. They're getting stability, I replied calmly, in a home where they're wanted and valued. Then came the guilt trips. After everything we've done for you, my mother said, tears starting to form. Housing you for 18 months, helping with the children, providing a family environment for them to grow up in. And I've been grateful, I acknowledged. I've also been paying $800 a month in rent, plus groceries and utilities. I've contributed more financially to this household than Jessica has, while also doing more chores and childcare. Let's not pretend this has been one-sided charity. Jessica tried a different approach, suddenly acting like we were close sisters. Sarah, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but we're family. Can't we work something out? Maybe we could set up a schedule, divide up the space more fairly? Where was this concern for fairness when you took the best room and pushed my kids into the basement playroom? I asked. Where was this sisterly cooperation when you scheduled Noah's milestone celebration on Sophie's birthday? That shut her up pretty quickly. The final week living there was tense but manageable. My parents barely spoke to me, giving me the silent treatment like I was a teenager who'd broken curfew. Jessica alternated between trying to guilt me and making passive-aggressive comments about how I was abandoning family in their time of need. But you know what? My kids were different that week. They were excited, hopeful, and more talkative than they'd been in months. Michael started planning how he'd arrange his new room, talking about putting up his basketball posters and having friends over. Sophie was already asking if she could have a sleepover party once we were settled. Moving day arrived on a Thursday. I'd hired professional movers, which shocked my parents. How can you afford professional movers? My mother asked, still not fully accepting that I was financially stable. The same way I afforded the security deposit and first month's rent, I replied. By working hard and saving responsibly. The movers were efficient and professional. As they loaded our belongings, my parents stood watching from the window, still not helping or participating. Jessica made snide comments about me showing off and making a big production out of everything. But here's what got to them. The respect the movers showed me. They called me ma'am, asked for my decisions on placement and timing, and treated me like the competent adult I was. It was a stark contrast to how my own family had been treating me. As we loaded the last boxes, Mrs. Chun from next door came over. Sarah, I'm so happy for you and the kids, she said warmly. You deserve your own space where you can all thrive. My mother overheard this and looked genuinely puzzled. She couldn't understand how a neighbor could see what my own family had missed. That night, we stayed in a nice hotel with a pool. Michael and Sophie splashed around in the water, laughing and being kids in a way they hadn't been able to at my parents' house, where everything had to revolve around Noah's schedule. Mom, Sophie said as I tucked her into the hotel bed, I'm excited about tomorrow, but I'm also a little sad about leaving Grandma and Grandpa. That's okay, sweetheart, I told her. You can feel both things at once. We love them, but we also deserve to be treated well. Sometimes loving someone means creating healthy distance. Friday morning, we drove to our new home. The keys felt solid and real in my hand as I unlocked the door to our future. The kids ran through the empty rooms, their voices echoing with excitement instead of being hushed into whispers. "This is ours," Michael asked, standing in what would be his room. "This is ours," I confirmed. No conditions, no walking on eggshells, no being treated like we're temporary inconveniences. We were finally home. 3 months later, the transformation in our lives was remarkable. My kids were thriving in ways I hadn't seen since before we moved in with my parents. Michael made the honor roll for the first time in 2 years. His teacher commented on how much more confident and participative he'd become in class. Sophie joined the school drama club and was cast in their fall production. But the real changes were in the little everyday moments. Saturday mornings, when we could sleep in without worrying about waking the baby. Cooking dinners based on what we wanted to eat, not what worked around Noah's feeding schedule. Friends are coming over to play without anyone complaining about the noise level. Meanwhile, my family was discovering what life was like without me there to pick up the slack. The first crack in their perfect arrangement appeared just 2 weeks after we left. My father called me on a Tuesday evening. "Sarah, I know things ended badly, but maybe we were too hasty about the living arrangements. The house feels empty without the kids' voices." "The kids are doing great, Dad," I replied. "They love having their own space and not having to whisper all the time." There was a long pause. "Your mother misses them terribly." She didn't realize how quiet it would be. What he didn't say, but what I learned later through my Aunt Susan, was that Jessica was struggling badly without my built-in childcare support. She'd been depending on me to watch Noah when she wanted to go out with friends, run errands alone, or just take a break. Now that responsibility fell entirely on my parents, who were in their early 60s and not equipped for full-time baby duty. A month later, my mother showed up at our house unannounced on a Saturday afternoon. She found us in the backyard, where Michael was teaching Sophie how to shoot basketballs at the hoop I'd had installed. "The house is so quiet without them," she admitted, watching her grandchildren play freely in their own space. "I didn't realize how much life they brought to our home." "They bring life wherever they're appreciated," I replied simply. She was quiet for a while, then said, "Jessica and I have been having difficulties. She's struggling with the full-time responsibility of Noah without backup help. She lost her job last week because she was late too many times when childcare fell through." I felt a twinge of sympathy, but not guilt. "That's challenging, I'm sure. What's her plan?" "She's asked to move back into your old room," my mother said quietly. "But your father and I are exhausted. We didn't realize how much you helped with everything, not just the kids, but the household management, the cooking, the organization." The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd kicked out the family member who contributed the most, thinking they were making life easier. 2 months later, Jessica's situation had deteriorated further. Her relationship with Noah's father had completely fallen apart when she asked him for child support. She couldn't afford her place without a job, and my parents' retirement funds were being drained by supporting her and Noah full-time. My Aunt Susan, who had stayed in touch with us, told me the rest. "Your parents are finally seeing the pattern they created. Jessica never learned to be self-sufficient because she never had to be. You were always the responsible one, so they took your strength for granted." The final validation came when Michael and Sophie's teachers asked about the positive changes they'd seen in both kids. "Whatever you're doing at home," Sophie's teacher said, "keep it up. She's blooming this year." That evening, as I put my confident, happy children to bed in their rooms, in our own home, I realized we'd gained something far more valuable than a place to live. We'd gained our self-worth back. 6 months after leaving my parents' house, I can honestly say it was the best decision I ever made for my children and myself. We've built a life where everyone matters equally, where achievements are celebrated, and where love isn't conditional on convenience. Michael is starting high school next year with confidence I haven't seen in him since he was little. I'm proud of you for standing up for us, Mom, he told me recently. You showed us that we don't have to accept being treated badly, even by family. Sophie has friends over regularly now, and our house is filled with the sounds of children being children. I like our house better because nobody treats us like we're in the way, she said simply, and that statement broke my heart and healed it at the same time. My relationship with my parents is limited now to major holidays, and that's okay. They're slowly learning that love requires action, not just words. Jessica is still struggling with the consequences of never having to be truly independent, but that's not my problem to solve anymore. The biggest lesson I learned is that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your children is to walk away from toxic situations, even when they involve family. Being the strong one doesn't mean accepting less than you deserve. If you're in a situation where you or your children are being treated as less important than others in your family, start planning your escape. Save money, build your independence, and believe that you deserve better. The best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting free and building the life you want. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting your children's well-being? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please subscribe for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself and your family. Remember, your worth isn't determined by how much others need you to sacrifice. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pack your bags and choose yourself and your children first. That's exactly what we did, and we've never looked back.